Hello. This is Margaret Ajibode, the STEM Positive Disruptor, and this is me as conversation with Dr. Shini Somara. This podcast is basically to educate, raise awareness, change perception, and demystify what STEM is all about. So STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And basically, I have this wonderful amazing lady. She's an award winner, well, 2 awards winner. She became a fellow with the IET. Well, you can explain that, and also a design award as well. But she will talk more about it and her broadcasting journey, as well as her journey in her profession as well. So welcome.
Thanks, Margaret. Good to see you.
You too.
Thanks for doing this podcast. So important to spread the word on what people are doing in STEM. So as was said, my name is Dr. Shini Somara, and I am originally a mechanical engineer, and I then went on to do my doctorate in computational fluid dynamics, which is the software that allows engineers to visualize, actually see on their computer screens how gases and liquids flow, which is really useful for being able to model aircraft wings, so you can see how the air moves over a wing, or Formula One cars, or even looking at how air flows in buildings, which has been really useful during the pandemic in understanding how COVID spreads indoors.
Good, interesting. So that's amazing. So are you able to use that within, go to companies and explain how it's going to be used within the environment, or how has it changed and impact the industry that you where you did your doctorate?
So CFD has been really useful for engineers, because rather than building a prototype of a wing and then putting it in a wind tunnel and watching how air flows over it in a wind tunnel, which can be a really expensive process to actually build prototypes and things, you can use CFD to build it on a computer instead. So basically create a simulation of something.
Yes.
So you don't actually need to build any physical model. You can just visualize something on a computer and make a few tweaks. I'll make the wing a bit thinner here or a bit fatter there, and see how that changes airflow patterns. And so even though CFD is quite an expensive tool, or it certainly was when I was doing research on it, it's got a lot cheaper today, because now there are all kinds of open source tools. Many more engineers can use it. And it allows you to have a cheaper design process, because you can make all your changes on a computer rather than having to build, test, record, change, build, test, record, change, and have that iterative process going on.
Indeed, yeah.
So and it really is a tool that is used by a lot of engineers, because most of the engineering we build has to be in some form of fluid, whether that's aeroplanes in air, cars moving along in air, boats moving in seas and oceans, so usually there's a fluid involved. And that's what really sparked my interest when I was doing mechanical engineering, just like you. I was just amazed that you could use mathematics to look at what's usually invisible to us. So I was like, okay, I want to learn more about that.
Why not?
And so I spent 4.5 years learning more about that, and researching for my doctorate. And it was very intense. It taught me a lot, not just about fluid dynamics, but about the skills that I think have stayed with me for the rest of my days so far. Analytic skills,
Yes.
Learning how to process patterns and look at data and things, all the things that artificial intelligence can do in 2 minutes flat, took me 4.5 years. So
well, hold on, if you didn't do it, they won't be able to do what they do now. Again, it's we as humans are the ones that start things up, and then you have people who are now working behind the scenes where artificial intelligence is concerned. So hey, without us, that can't be happen. And it's amazing how what you've also shown is how technology is enabling things to be seen so fluid. You talked about, and how it's in the industry it's being used, and how we're able to detect things and how we can change things in the digital world before we bring it into a real tangible way. And that to me is so important. It also showcases what is possible within our STEM world, what we do, and how the different roles and the different opportunities or the different ways to be able to still achieve things. And from what you were saying, you enjoyed it, and you started as a mechanical engineer, and then you went into your PhD, and what you learned, and as you talked about your analytical skills, problem solving, there's so many different things, communication as well, because now you've moved forward in so many ways that now you're broadcasting, you've done quite a lot of things. You're also an award winner. I mean, gosh, amazing. I'm so proud of you. Well done. And we need to celebrate you, and we are celebrating you because that's what it's all about. We celebrate our engineers when we have, I mean, it's not just females, but I think it's also important when we see females who are doing great things and they're achieving great things. We should every day celebrate, and not just on an annual basis, but anytime we see a difference, anytime we see females impacting our industry, then we should showcase that. We can promote that, because what it does do is it enables us to show to our young people who maybe not have thought about it, hold on, if Shini could do it, I can do it too. And that's what you should showcase, and that's what we want to celebrate. So, do you still do work within industry, or are you now mainly broadcasting? Because I know you, as you said, you won a award for design. And why was that given to you? Could you expand on that? Because it doesn't, from your PhD to design, so how does that marry?
Well, just to put things into context, I finished my PhD 18 years ago.
Okay, so Dora, you're competing with me, right?
So yeah, it was a long time ago that I graduated from university, and I spent a few years in industry. But I really wanted to communicate science and technology, because the best thing about my doctorate was going to conferences and telling people about my research. And the reason why I love doing that is because I think when you connect with others and you communicate with others, it can really spark innovation. It can lead to progress, because if you're telling people at conferences, here's what I'm doing with my research, and then someone else is doing something similar, they're like, oh, okay, you're doing that, I'm doing this, maybe we could join up and do this bigger thing.
Exactly.
And I think
collaborating,
yeah, you should never ever do research in a silo, and I don't think much research actually happens on its own. It really does involve a village. And so I felt that communication was really important. I also really enjoyed it. And one thing led to another in terms of that thought process, where I then went, well, where's the biggest platform I can communicate? Okay, TV. And so I then went on this journey. Gosh, when I look back on it now, it's terrifying just how much of a leap that was into the unknown, because there I was with all these great qualifications in engineering. My dad's an engineer. I've grown up in a very STEM household.
Wow.
And then I was going into an industry that I knew nothing about. I have no contacts in that industry. Just no one in my family is kind of public facing or extroverted. I mean, they even struggled to take photos at Christmas, they're so shy. But I really wanted to be able to connect with others through STEM. And so I kind of just figured out step by step how to get into television and broadcast. And it took me years to actually learn how to speak in front of an audience. I mean, once I'd finished my doctorate, I really didn't know how to kind of translate complex science into something that people could understand. I'd learned how to talk about my research to other academics in the same field as me. And often the language was extremely technical and complex. But I didn't know how to just make it accessible. I didn't know how to engage people with content. So it really did take me a long time. I had to develop skills that you don't really learn in engineering, like learning how to kind of talk on camera, things like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't overnight that my broadcast career started to gather momentum. It took years, and then like little opportunities here and there, because, for example, in 2013, I was offered to host a show on Al Jazeera, and it was based in Los Angeles, California. And I took the job, and it sounds really glamorous, but I had to move my entire life to the other side of the world, another continent. And so I did that in 2013, and I ended up staying in America for 5 years.
Wow.
And that's where I learned a lot of my craft, which was learning how to take a complicated science subject and turn it into something that was really watchable and engaging.
Wow.
And that's what I consider I do today. I feel like I'm almost a translator of academic complex content into something that we can all enjoy.
Amazing. And this is so important, because sometimes when people look at, or the public at us in the STEM world, they think of you just as being technical. But what you've also shown is here that you can transit. You don't have to leave your profession or what your first love is. For example, you started as an engineer, your PhD, but you also became a communicator of your profession. And it's also about you saying, sometimes you've got to move. You traveled, and you went to a different continent altogether, and you lent your skills. So it showcases that sometimes these things have to happen, but it's not impossible. But you can be much more than just a technical person, a person who sits behind a desk. You can go out there and broadcast, and as you're doing, as your TV world, and learning your skills. And this is something we want to show the public, that this is another opportunity, this is another arena that you can look at and do things, because there is so many opportunities out there, but not knowing it sometimes can hinder you from making a decision to come into our world. So as you're aware, I'm a businesswoman, so of course I'm a technical person, but also I'm a business person. So I know much more than that, and that we as human beings, we're much more than one thing, we're other things as well, especially in our professional world. So based on your journey, thank you very much. And really, that's fascinating and really interesting. Based on your journey as well, what are the things you've seen, and what would you define as the good, the bad, and the ugly of your profession, of the world that you've lived in, and what things that you found as issues that should have been addressed, that if thinking back, because you mentioned about your growing up, you weren't extroverts, you were introverts, most people, but you had to learn those skills. But then again, you went into your professional world, and there were things you saw, and maybe even now as a communicator of STEM, what are the things that you've noticed that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of our world, and what are the issues, and how can we address them?
So I think the good of my experiences has been that STEM is just really awesome. It's an industry that is full of really interesting people who are applying their talents and skills and interests and passions and working towards making the quality of all of our lives better. And so the good is that I get to meet incredible people who are really making a difference. And I'm constantly inspired by the people I meet, and I'm constantly kind of topping up my hope for life, because I'm just like, oh my God, you've just done the most things, like, get you, and I just want to be like that. I want to do something like that. I'm always just amazed with the creativity of engineers, because they're coming up with ingenious inventions, and it just, engineers are never bored, and I'm always inspired by that. So that's definitely one of the goods, and there are many, but I think that's my number one. And then the bad, I would say, is that I've been fighting for a long time to break the stereotypes in STEM. And I think what isn't so positive is that engineering particularly has had a really outdated stereotype for a long time that's kept women and girls out of engineering. And I think my experience when I graduated as an engineer and I worked in industry was that there were so few people like me that it actually meant that I gravitated towards something not so engineering focused in order to find where I fit.
Yeah.
And maybe if I'd seen more people like me and I had felt more valued in the industry and more like I belong, then maybe I would be still a fluid dynamicist today. So I feel like engineering has lost someone with an expertise because they didn't embrace what I had to offer. And I didn't feel very welcome. So that's been the bad. But I guess another good out of that is that it's really helped me to focus my work, because a lot of my work is about encouraging girls and women and underrepresented people of minorities into STEM. And I'm so determined not to have anyone experience what I experienced that I've been very driven and focused in helping others do that, you know, to feel welcome in STEM. So out of something bad came something good, because I think it's not just me. There are many people like you and others who are really putting a lot of their own time and effort into making sure that generations that come up behind us in STEM stay in STEM, you know. So yeah, that's the bad, but I think it's in the past, and I think things are changing.
Yeah.
I've seen the needle not really move much over these 18 years, but I have recently seen a real change in pace. Like, women are becoming way more confident, way more outspoken. I don't know if it's because I'm now moving around in different circles, but I feel like diversity and inclusion and equality is really like at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, in the same way sustainability is in engineering. So there's a lot of change. And again, I'm very excited about how that's going to influence next generation engineers and STEMers. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So the ugly, I think the ugly would be male insecurity.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think the ugliest thing I've experienced in engineering is male insecurity. And what I mean by that is people who are so insecure in themselves that they've felt that they need to make me feel smaller. And I'm so aware of it today that other people's insecurities don't affect me as much as it did when I was a graduate. When I was a graduate, I had these amazing qualifications. My brain was like finely tuned for fluid dynamics and mechanical engineering, but I had no inner confidence. And so if someone was insecure and said, "Oh, what are you doing that for?" I'd be like, "What am I doing that for? Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Or maybe I'm doing wrong." And like, there was this like self-doubt that like washed over me, and I started to really question myself, and my confidence would be chipped, and it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. Now I'm older and more experienced to know that when someone makes condescending, patronizing, unsupportive, unencouraging comments, it is actually more of a reflection of them rather than me. And that has been a 180-degree change. And I'm not even saying that I'm good at that, but at least I'm like, I'm feeling really rubbish right now. Maybe that's because I'm taking someone's negative comments on board too much, so
True.
I'm still trying to catch myself.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the further I go in my career, the more and more impressive are the people that I get to work with. And so it's like I'm constantly being challenged on this confidence issue. So it's a work in progress. But that's definitely been the ugliest thing.
Wow, amazing. Do you know something? You're not the only one who has gone through that. And I think as graduates, and because you knew something, you don't, because you're still trying to find your feet, you're thinking, what about if I do this? What if I go wrong? And so if someone else says it who's been in the industry, not because they're better than you, not because they're more experienced, but because they're more confident in that, and that they're comfortable in that environment. So if they challenge you, you think, oh, maybe they're right. And because you're not feeling that confident or great within yourself, you let their own impression get into your head, which is a wrong thing. And I think this is something that affects.
Let me just
sorry.
let me cut in there, because as a mentor now myself, and someone who's kind of worked with people who mentor, and like just my awareness of the mentor dynamic, I honestly do believe that anyone that's confident in themselves would never want people with less experience to feel rubbish about themselves. So, someone may have more experience, they may be older, they may have all these things, impressive things going for them. But the best mentors and role models that I've met are the ones that go, okay, you're young, you're new, and I understand why you are doing it that way, but learn from this, or you're doing great, but how about trying it this way? Not outright saying you're wrong, what you're doing, you don't know. There's confident ways and authoritative ways of helping people who are not so confident. And I think that's a reflection of their own confidence in themselves.
Indeed. Do you know, what you said is so right. And I think when you move, as you said, when you move in different circles and meet different people, you pick up on these things. But when you're still fresh and still green behind the ears, you don't see all these things. But all you see is what you see, and so you get caught up. And it's not just you alone. There are quite a lot of females, a lot of young people that are going through that process. So what would you say? Because I think this is so important, because I think confidence is an issue where, not as bad, but maybe in certain circles, where if you're not confident about certain things you're doing there, then you feel a bit vulnerable. And so that comes across. What would you advise? Because I want to sort of wrap it up and summarize that. What would you advise people, or young females, or even females in general, who maybe have gone out and want to come back in? And how would you enable them to equip themselves to be able to meet the challenge? Because the issues are still there. You talk about male insecurity, that's still there. It's not but men, the type of males within the industry are changing as well. They're much more understanding, they can pick up on vibes, and I think the way they've been brought up is different as well. So just to finalize and round it up, what would you give as 5 practical solutions to help where you're finishing from uni, or just education system? I mean, it worked well for your parents, maybe having mentors. I don't know. I don't want to put words into, but what would you see as a driver that will help to change things for young women, young people, females, even get in the industry, the education system, the media, to be able to communicate in such a way that the public can see what we do and do it well, but also when the public are making informed decisions concerning encouraging their children to make choose subjects or move on to a profession, what would you advise based on what your passion for what you do, that if you had the right people around you when you first started, you'll still be in the industry, not be a communicator? But it doesn't matter though, because sometimes things change, and it's worked well for you right now, isn't it? So so just give me 5 practical solutions that you think would help, that will change the perception and change how we see ourselves, and to bring us into the industry, or to work ourselves through the process to achieve those goals?
Well, I've actually got a book coming out in spring,
All right.
2023, called Engineers Making a Difference. And there's about 50 engineers in the book. And we talk about their journey into engineering. And what I've learned from writing that book is that it's really important to know what you like and what you don't like, not just in your career, but also just personally. You know, are you someone that likes to learn by being hands-on, or are you someone that likes to learn by reading books on your own? Do you like being in a classroom? You know, so know what it is that you, what makes you tick, like get to know yourself. Because I think as a young person, we can be very influenced by our friends. We want to be cool, we want to be in the gang, you know, we want to be popular. But in striving to be all of those things, we can really forget who we are as individuals.
Sure.
For example, everyone thinks I'm massively extroverted, working in television, but actually I'm a massive introvert. And so when I have been on a stage for, you know, a week doing a show or something, like I really need to spend the evening by myself, just recharging and things. And it might not be the most popular thing because everyone's going for dinner or whatever, but I know now that that's the kind of evening I need in order to be able to do my best the next day. So know yourself, take time to get to know who you are. And I really got to know myself when I moved to LA, and I was there all on my own because, you know, I didn't know anyone there. And I really spent a lot of time on my own, and I did a lot of like road trips by myself. And I think that's when I really got to learn what makes me tick. And the reason why that's important is because it will massively influence the kind of career you choose. And you know, why does an introvert go into a public facing job? Well, because I love people and I love connecting. I just don't need to do it 24/7, you know. So I do want to do that in my job, but I also want to have a very peaceful, quiet time when I'm not working, you know. And that's why I ended up gravitating towards media, because in engineering I was very reclusive. Like my work involved 3 computer screens that were all crunching numbers and you know, generating data to be able to give you these beautiful CFD visuals. But I never saw anyone all day, you know, and it kind of was driving me a bit nuts. You know, I wanted to be able to have both. So figure out who you are, figure out what you are passionate about, and then once you have a sort of vague idea of what you want to do with your career, do loads of research on it, find out what companies are doing. I highly recommend being much more hands-on. I mean, writing this book, I see that the people who were much more hands-on, like the people that did apprenticeships, I'm a big fan of apprenticeships now. The people that did internships and, you know, summer jobs in companies, those are the people that really go further quicker, because getting into industry for engineers is the best way to speed up your career, because you make contacts, you know what it's like to be in the real world. You know, when I came out of university, even though my doctorate was based in industry, I was still in a sort of academic cocoon, which I don't think is particularly useful. So basically, yeah, know who you are and what you want, and then do the research to get there. And also remember that all the mistakes that you make are really useful too. So you might do an internship that was really rubbish, but that's informed you that it wasn't for you. So learn from your mistakes, and don't be scared of failure, because I think it teaches us more than getting everything right.
great. Okay, so is that 5? I wanted 5 recommendations. 5. Okay, so know yourself is important. So what else would you encourage? So having mentors or do you think a mentor is important if you can find one?
I've never had mentors.
Not me.
I've gone through my career doing things that felt right.
Okay.
No one I know has done what I did,
Okay.
you know, and I think because of that, my 5th piece of advice would be to believe in what you can contribute to the world, and take the leap, because if no one else is doing it, there's a pretty good chance that that's the reason why you should.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, be the trailblazer, be the one who does the change. And you know, it's quite interesting because you talked about know yourself. I think that's very important. It's try different things as well. Like you talk about apprenticeship and internship as well. I think in a way, when you have that hands-on, it makes a huge difference as well, because it gives you an indicator of whether or not it's something that you can work with or not. And try different things as well. And I think in a way, it's so important. You know, I'm just impressed and so amazed by you, an award-winning broadcaster, and you know the things you've done and how you been able to explain your world in such a fun way as well. Because I was looking on your LinkedIn page and I was looking at all those programs as well. I think, wow, I am so impressed. And the book that's coming out as well next year. Do you know? Please shout out about this, because what we want to do is get people to hear it, listen to it, because again, our journey does make us who we are today. And you are going to sometimes things that go wrong is actually quite good. It's a building block for you to go into the next stage as well. But never give in, never give up, because again, the opportunity is out there. But it's trying. As you said, you didn't have a mentor, but you tried different things, and look at you now. So I'm really impressed, Shini. I'm really, really impressed with what you've achieved and what you're trying to do, and the fact that you are a role model. You are someone that can be, people look and say, people like us, I can relate to you. And that is so important for us in the industry, because sometimes if you don't have someone who you can relate to, it becomes difficult. As you're saying, things have changed. The dynamics is changing. And we want to keep the momentum going. And I think that's something is very, very important. So I am grateful. Thank you so much for coming on board today. I'm really appreciative of our conversation. It's fun, and I'm sure everybody else will appreciate the conversation as well. So this is here again, the STEM Positive Disruptor, Margaret Ajibade, on Mia's conversation with Dr. Shini Somara. So thank you again very much, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.